The final panelists that we have here, I don't need to introduce. If I do, perhaps I think we should all leave the room. My good friend, Michael Binion. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel for today. Michael.
Thank you, Dan. And I'm really so happy you're here, and wonderful to hear what's going on in the United States on solutions that don't involve taxes, and also food security. I think has every issue that the oil and gas industry has, which I come from. What I really want to get across is about 3 points, but it really starts with I'm just so frustrated with this constant refrain. Well, conservatives don't have an alternative to the carbon tax, so they must want to do nothing. And I'm just so tired because we sponsored, our Modern Miracle sponsored carbon tax panels, climate policies. We had a very entertaining debate on carbon taxes here. This was 2017, 2018, 2019. These ideas and alternatives were in the Scheer platform. Some of them were in the O'Toole platform. And I just heard Pierre Poilievre talk today, and believe me, some of those ideas are in his speech today too. So we have great alternatives. So I want to just leave people with 3 points so that we never tolerate this, we don't have an alternative. And the first is, and maybe if I could get this, hopefully you guys have that slide queued for me. If you could put up, first of all, I would say, there is a real issue, and that issue is, that issue to me for the global environment is the population is on its way to somewhere near 10 billion by 2050, and there will be global pressures on the environment. We've seen it already with the growth from 1 billion to 7 billion. We have to manage forestry now. We have to manage fishery now. These are global resources, global resources. We're going to see more of that, and if they can get that slide up, our company had a clean gas project in Quebec that we engineered to be mitigated gas, and we did a full cycle environmental impact study, 18 different things. Only 2 of them are climate. So whatever your thoughts on the climate are, what are your thoughts on clean air, human health, biodiversity, land use? There is a whole bunch of other impacts from industrial development. And so if you think climate's the only, first of all, it's not the only environmental issue, but if you think it's not a big problem or it's not an emergency, and I'm not sure there is an emergency either, but I do think it's an issue, there's 16 other factors that we do care about. So I think that's one thing. There is an issue. Many of these things, that's not the slide, but anyways, the CREG report, they'll go through these 18 different issues, I think, and we should be concerned about that, and some of them will take global cooperation. So I think that's one thing. Let's agree there's an issue, and I think most conservatives agree about the environment is important. The word conservative, it involves conservation, right? Okay, that's one point. There's a problem. 2, the Canadian economy is uniquely exposed to policy in this area. And I'll just tell you, this is the paper I wrote. The other reason I'm so offended about this is I wrote Canada's first paper on carbon leakage in 2017. So it really personally offends me to say when they say that we didn't talk about alternatives. But to understand about the Canadian economy, 70% of our GDP, this comes from a Nick Rivers study from University of Ottawa, and it's a bit outdated, but I still think it's fair. 70% of the Canadian economy, GDP, is derived from trade. In America, that's 30%. In Europe, about 50%. So where our economy is at least twice as exposed to any policy that affects trade as the United States is, for example, twice as affected. The other thing is our economy uses 14 megajoules of energy per $1 GDP. America uses 9.3, Europe uses 7, half. So again, our economy on energy is twice as exposed to mistakes on energy policy. So I just want to say that this is a unique thing about us. The other countries that share this would be Australia and Norway, right? But Canada's in this position. And so any policy that affects trade or energy, Canada's 2 times exposed on both. So let's say 4 times as exposed on the issue. So it's important that we get it right. And 3 is the point, conservatives do have alternatives. And I'm just going to quickly run through. We identified in our carbon tax debates and our climate debates back in 2018, 2019 at this forum, 12 different policy buckets that you could use to address climate. And so it's a straw man argument to say, oh, it's carbon taxes versus regulations or do nothing. Well, there's 3 options. What about the other 9? And I'll just go through. Here's the ones that we're doing already. It's so ridiculous it's regulations versus carbon taxes because they're doing both. So regulated mandates, we're just going to outlaw coal. Right? We're going to just tell you what to do. 2 is consumer or local retail carbon taxes, or you can have big business, big emitter carbon taxes. By the way, those are all being done by the Liberals today. Direct consumer subsidies, big emitter direct subsidies, and in Quebec, big emitter carbon trading. So those are policies the Liberals are already doing, all 6 of them. The 7th one, which they're starting to play with in the Canadian energy regulations, has elements of smart regs. So just with that's regulations. You remember the CAFE limits where they just told the car industry, you have to hit this average fleet, combined average fleet mileage. It was probably one of the most impactful environmental regulations in the world ever. It's brought down really cleaned air, but they didn't tell the companies what cars to build. They just said hit that target. So that's called flex rigs or smart rigs. Liberals starting to do that. What subsidies for technology or for meeting emissions targets? That would be like the IRA in the United States. We're not doing that. True carbon pricing systems. A carbon pricing system is Nordhaus, the guy who won a Nobel Prize for this stuff. It has to be regional. It has to reduce regulations, and it has to be revenue neutral. So the Liberal carbon tax, it doesn't tick any of those boxes. It's not even really a carbon pricing system. 10, conservation, creating carbon sinks and credits. Half the credits we buy are from developing nations who have decided to put forests aside. Why can't Canada do that too? Harmonize with trading partners, that's what Harper was pushing. I mean, I think that ultimately now means something like the IRA today. 12, something that I've proposed, wrote a paper on, Navius Research has done it, Conference Board of Canada has done papers on this, is the idea of reversing carbon leakage. So instead of taxing the best in the world so it moves to somewhere else, it's far less than the best in the world, let's do the opposite. As Polly talked about today, let's produce more of the products that have the lowest embedded emissions in the world and reduce net global emissions by doing it, right? So that's reversing carbon leakage. And the 13th one would be doing nothing. Now, of those ones, the first 6 the Liberals are doing, the next ones Conservatives are proposing, and the last one, do nothing, nobody's talking about. So there's the 3 points I want to leave you with today.
Internal systems. We are so focused on being so perfect at process, we just forget about the fact that we got to make a living and compete with the world as well as an exporter.
Miss the forest for the trees. Michael.
I just want to emphasize something that Amy said, that, and you know, they say history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Well, Pierre Trudeau brain drain rhymes with Justin Trudeau brain drain. I don't know if you knew that. But this is happening in real time, and if you just look at Amy's U.S.-based organization, of course everything's big in Texas, as we know, 3,000 to 5,000 companies a year reviewing who have got ideas to reduce the emissions from our primary production, whether it's agriculture or biotech or oil and gas or whatever, and how many of those were coming from Canada. And it's not that they're not coming from Canadians. It's just the Canadians are now, if you're a Canadian climate tech engineer or entrepreneur, you've moved to the United States. Yes.
Why are we not looking at our best and our brightest? Michael?
So when I talk about those policy buckets, here's what's in common with all the ones the Liberals are doing. Government-led initiatives. What's in common with the ones that they won't admit Conservatives are proposing? Private market solutions. Yeah. So of course they don't want it. Basically what they're saying is, well, the joke I make is that they've got a fetish for carbon pain and punishment. But what they're really saying is we don't want to consider any alternative that involves private market solutions, and therefore the Conservatives don't have an alternative.
Mm. So that sounds like you are either for freedom or you're not, and you believe that government can be all things to all people, except when it runs into massive deficits or debts, or when it loses confidence and public confidence, which might have been there originally. We all want to do something well by the climate, but when it comes to the cost, count me out.
Or a brain drain.
Or a brain drain, in this case.
And this way, just to what Sherry's talking about, what's so obvious is that, you know, Canada's primarily a resource nation. When we say we're the best in the world at resources, we mean that the Royal Bank and our banking system is the best in the world at lending to them, and our Toronto Stock Exchange is the best in the world at taking them public, and the manufacturers in Ontario are the best at building pressure vessels for the oil and gas business, or farm equipment for farming. We're the best in the world at the whole supply chain, and we've just really missed out on this amazing opportunity, because companies like mine were proposing these technology-oriented private market solutions for emissions and climate. Well, I've had dinner with Stephen Guilbeault. He doesn't take my call anymore, but if you want an interesting story, talk to Maria about how that dinner went. But here we have...
Too busy climbing a building.
You have to talk about Sherry's talking about that we could be the world's leaders in agriculture on emissions too. And by the way, we get almost all our lamb from New Zealand. It's not impossible we couldn't get all our beef from Argentina. Do we really think the carbon footprint of beef in Argentina is better than the one in Canada?
Or Mexico.
Or Mexico? Exactly. Like all of our resources, fishing, I mean, every one of our resources, which is the vast majority of the Canadian private economy, we're all facing very similar problems from, trying to address what I think is a real global challenge, that how will we manage a global environment with 10 billion people? But we're running into real problems that, as Canada, a world leader, has private market solutions that Sherry talks about. Every one of our industries has amazing ideas and technology, easily could be the world leader in climate tech. Canada could easily be that. And instead, we're mired in government regulations that leaves government in charge of what's going to happen. So I'll give you an example. And by Navius Research, which is one of the very few economic groups in Canada that has a partial equilibrium economic model, and they've bolted onto that the CO2 impact. So they're the go-to people in Vancouver. But Ecofiscal, the great infographic experts, they go to them too, right? They did a study on aluminum, which we were part of, and Canadian aluminum, and of course, which is BC and Quebec, the two places that voluntarily put in some kind of carbon tax system or trading system. And the data, what the data shows, that Canada produces 2 tons of CO2 for every ton of aluminum. So two for one. And that's true of Quebec and for BC, and it's because they use hydroelectricity principally, lots of natural gas and other mineral, but principally they have hydroelectricity to make the aluminum, right? The United States is 9 tons of CO2 for each ton of aluminum. Australia is 11. China is 14. Right. Russia, it turns out, because also with hydro, et cetera, they're like 3, but still well above Canada. So why, and so the study that Navius did was, well, if Canada doubled its aluminum production, right, to replace other competitors, the embedded emissions, of course, are so much lower, like 20%. For every extra ton we produce, we eliminate 500% on CO2 emissions. But what did we do? Right? We said, let's put in more, let's give you more expensive inputs, natural gas, for example. Let's make your inputs more expensive. Let's burden you with all kinds of regulations. Let's burden you with several layers of taxes. But that's okay, because we'll give you a credit, an output-based allocation credit, which they've said, if you're not producing at least 50,000 or 25,000 tons of CO2 per year, you can never afford to capture all the information you're talking about. So we burden them all with that. So do you think we're producing more aluminum, or are people thinking about shutting down their aluminum in Canada? What I'm saying is we can make a far bigger difference in the world than we can at home.
Yes.
We can reduce more emissions by replacing American or Chinese aluminum, or by replacing beef from Mexico, or by replacing coal with LNG. We only have to make a 0.5% difference to world emissions by doing these things, which we could do as a major supplier of resources. That would be the same as wiping out our entire emissions, basically, almost, right? So it's that we should be having an enormous impact on these global environment issues instead of a ludicrous impact. So in Quebec, we met with World Wildlife Fund, Suzuki, Greenpeace, and Equiterre, which is where Stephen Guilbeault is. And of course, and I would say that 3 of the 4, including Stephen Guilbeault, were actually, I think, very reasonable people. They were quite good to talk to. I think that they have, they really do have a concern about the global environment and are trying to do the right thing, right? But I went in to pitch our project, said, look, maybe you don't understand, but let me show you the numbers on how much emissions would be reduced simply by producing gas locally and not having to transport it. But look at all the other upsides there are that we could substantially reduce emissions. This is 2011, right? And Stephen goes, well, you're a pragmatic businessman, and it's not that we don't understand that. We do understand that. But first of all, we don't really care about other places' targets. The fact that Canadian emissions would go down is fine, but we concern primarily with Quebec emissions, so you're not helping that. And the other thing is, I'm an idealist, and nothing will satisfy me but zero, so it's not good enough that you're offering me this half loaf. Now, I'll tell you, 13 years later, 6 megatons just from the transportation would have already been reduced, and the government of Quebec would have had another $5 or $6 billion in revenue. So this is an environmental disaster, and it's a perfect example of what the end goes with this idea that we'll accept nothing but perfection, and we only care about our local results, is causing enormous harm. In spite of the well-being, in spite of them warning us about that there are genuine problems, which I give them full credit for, their solutions publicly mandated solutions are actually causing great environmental harm. Okay, well, three things. One, I think there is a real legitimate environmental global pressure coming from population growth and industry growth, for example. Two, the Canadian economy is orders of magnitude more exposed to good or bad policy choices because of the nature of our economy. Three, there really are private market solution alternatives to these issues. We don't have to only go with the public market. So those are the three things. And then I want to finish just with this technology solution that when I was young growing up in Calgary, there was 400,000 people. Today, there's 1.4, almost 1.5 million people. So it's grown almost 3 times the population in that time. And what I noticed during that time is that the air and water in Calgary is cleaner today than it was then.
Wow.
And we live in bigger houses and we drive more cars per person.
You're here.
Right? So why did that happen? It happened because of technology incented by flexible regulations that said, government will set the target on car emissions, and private sector will figure out how to meet it. So that's where that success came from. So if we don't think that from today to 2050 that we can't be producing more energy, more food, more minerals for more people, but have a lower overall environmental footprint, and people would have said you were crazy in 1970. You said there's going to be triple the population, yet the air and water will get cleaner. Well, it's not crazy to believe that we can't produce more for more people with a lower input. We can do it.
Amy, Sherry, Michael, this has been a wonderful day. It's given us an opportunity to be very positive and optimistic about the future, especially for Canada. Thank you for participating in today's session on tech, not taxes. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.